Hey guys, welcome back to my Arcade Pac-Man Marathon. Last time I introduced a new segment, Version Versus, in which I reviewed and compared two different versions of Miss Pac-Man, the arcade original and the Tengen home console port on the Genesis. Today we're continuing the marathon with Pac-Man Plus. Honestly, this probably could have just been bundled in with the original Pac-Man review, but I didn't have the idea for Version Versus back then and had planned on giving it its own video from the start, so here we are. That said, what exactly is Pac-Man Plus? Well, if you recall from last time, Miss Pac-Man was not developed by the original team at Namco, but rather by a group of college students in America, and was originally a modification of Pac-Man until Bally Midway made the project official. At this point, arcade modifications were getting very popular, and there were tons of unofficial ones floating around. Given the success of Miss Pac-Man, which started out as a Pac-Man conversion, and not wanting to let unofficial conversions corner their market, Bally Midway had another Pac-Man conversion made. This one would be released as the one true official Pac-Man conversion, and was marketed as such. This time they would keep it much closer to the original, with only a handful of small changes. At the time, Plus was considered a welcome upgrade to the original game, thanks to its familiar design and subtle changes, keeping it interesting and fresh for Pac-Man fans. But today, the game has been all but forgotten. I never saw any home console re-releases, being mostly relegated to a few plug-and-plays and more recently some home arcade machines. Is Pac-Man Plus a hidden gem of the arcade series, or a spin-off that's best left forgotten? Let's find out. Let's make one thing clear right from the start here. Pac-Man Plus is nearly identical to the original game. So much so that I really struggle to come up with anything unique to say about it. That said, understanding Plus's design relies a lot on understanding the original game's design, and I've already gone in depth on that in my original Pac-Man review. I don't want to spend half an hour repeating myself, so I'd highly suggest watching the original Pac-Man review if you haven't already, so we can all be on the same page as I talk about Plus. With that out of the way, what exactly has and hasn't changed? First off, the maze design. It's 100% exactly the same. No new levels, no altered mechanics or layout, nothing. Everything I said about Pac-Man's excellent maze design in my original review applies here word for word, so we're already off to a good start. Similarly, the Ghost's tracking AI has been left perfectly intact as well, keeping that tight balance between predictability and pseudo-randomness that gave the original game such a high skill ceiling, while simultaneously being challenging and addictive to newbies. You may remember from my Miss Pac-Man review that I criticized that game's attempts to change these elements while not fully understanding what made them so great in the first place, and in that sense I appreciate Plus not rocking the boat too hard. Unfortunately though, the superior fruit system from Miss Pac-Man is gone, and we're back to the fruit spawning in the middle of the maze and disappearing after about 9 seconds. An extended timer for the fruit would have really been appreciated in this game for reasons we'll get into later. The cutscenes and sound design are also completely unchanged from the original game, not even new cutscenes to replace the repeated Act 3s. Really, the biggest changes you'll notice right off the bat is that Pac-Man Plus features a whole host of new sprites. The maze walls are now green instead of dark blue, the Ghost's eyes have been squished together by 1 pixel when looking left or right, their Eden mode sprites have been vertically squashed with a little leaf coming out of their heads, for some reason, and the fruits have been almost entirely replaced. The cherry is now a cola can, and I've seen mixed information about whether or not this is actually a licensed Coca-Cola product placement. The strawberry is now a cocktail? Okay then. The orange is now a pea pod? Okay, what the hell? Who chose these? Whatever. Next is the apple, which has been replaced by an apple. Not sure why they chose to keep this one of all things. The melon is now a bunch of grapes, and the Galaxian is now a Galaxian still. Okay, well I can at least see why they kept this one. It is pretty cool, even if it's not a real food. Bell has been replaced with sliced bread. Weird choice. And finally, the key has been replaced with a stack of pancakes. Yeah, I'm not sure why they chose the foods that they did for this new sprite set. They're mostly just weird. Grapes are a pretty standard choice, but the rest of them are just strange, and the decision to keep the apple and Galaxian from the original game but nothing else just baffles me. I wouldn't exactly call this an upgrade, but it's not really a downgrade either, it's just different. Sprites aren't the only change to the fruits, however, as they now act as an extra power pellet. They even have a longer timer than the normal power pellets. In fact, they can turn the ghosts blue even later in the game when the regular power pellets can't. And they grant double the points for eating ghosts with them. But there's a catch. As you can see, or as you can't see, the ghosts turn invisible until they start flashing towards the end of the timer, making it nearly impossible to keep track of them more than a second after grabbing the fruit. It's basically down to luck if you'll get more than like 1 ghost, and by the time they're visible again, they've fucked off to the opposite side of the map and you'll never get back to them before the timer runs out. I like this addition. It's really interesting, but it doesn't feel like a very skill-based mechanic. But you can rack up some serious points if you get a good amount of ghosts from the regular and fruit power pellets. The normal power pellets have received the biggest change, as they now have random effects, adding more and more the farther you get into the game. They act normal at first, but as you progress, they can make the maze walls invisible, make the pack dots invisible, and or make only 3 ghosts turn blue, with the 4th staying normal. I don't really like any of these changes. Making the pellets invisible is a minor annoyance, but it's the least problematic effect you can get. The maze walls turning invisible, on the other hand, is really annoying. I constantly bump into shit because I can't see where I'm fucking going, and when combined with the random ghosts not turning blue, this can easily get you killed unfairly. In fact, the ghost thing in general is just a horrible design choice. Don't even bother trying to line up the ghosts and get them all in one power pellet, because more than likely you'll just end up getting fucked over by one of the ghosts not turning blue, forcing you to either abort your attempt to eat any ghosts entirely, or just die anyway. I don't know what drugs they were on when Bally Midway approved this nonsense, but as we'll see later, quality control was not really on the top of their priority list when it came to their Pac-Man sequels. That's not even the worst change though. That honor goes to the difficulty rebalancing. So remember how in the original game it starts off fairly easy, but as you get further into the game, the ghosts get more fast and aggressive, giving it a smooth difficulty curve? Well, this game throws all of that out the window and just starts you off in the middle of a goddamn war zone. Power pellets have reduced effectiveness right from the start. The ghosts all come out of the very first maze within seconds, and they hunt you down with a ruthlessness like I've never seen. At first, I honestly thought it was some kind of difficulty switch that was set incorrectly on MAME, since it also had a cheat switch set to on at first that I had to fix in the options, so I dug out my old plug-and-play to check the game on an official release. No, there's nothing wrong with my emulator or the settings. The game is just this difficult by default. Honestly, a board is on unfair, especially when you factor in the bullshit random effects from the power pellets. All these minor changes add up to greatly increase the difficulty of Pac-Man, but in a way that doesn't just feel like a hard mode. It feels like the game is just bullshitting you to eat more quarters, and trying to fight back against the terrible design choices is just frustrating. I can see how some people who got bored of the original Pac-Man might find this a bit more entertaining, but if you ask me, it flies in the face of the elegant design of the original for the sake of making it more of a coin gobbler. It's not an awful game, but I wouldn't really call this fun, especially when there's just a flat-out better version of the game already out there. That's all I really have to say about Pac-Man Plus. It's conceptually an interesting idea, but the changes they implemented fail to add variety and only end up making the game more frustrating and annoying than anything. Needless to say, I don't think it's very good. Oh well, they can't all be winners. Next time, we'll be looking at... oh no. Oh god. Baby Pac-Man. Well, until then, feel free to check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching!